This is a father abandoning his own honor. This is a father taking on shame. It's ridiculous. This is a very, very dishonorable son, but this is a more dishonorable father. This is a weak-willed father in the minds of the Pharisees. This is a father who is not protecting what must be protected. This is a silly kind of superficial love in their eyes. And by the way, where's the older brother here? He is purposely not in the story. Jesus doesn't put him in the story here, but he should be in the story, and that's another eye roller here, because the older brother had a responsibility to protect his younger brother from stupid things, and he knew about the division because he got his 2/3. Why didn't he stop this kind of insolent behavior by the younger brother? And why didn't he, of all things, do what the older son was committed to doing, protect the honor of his father? It's just absurd. The whole thing is absurd. The younger son behaves in an absurd way, the father in an absurd way, and the older brother in an absurd way. It's all shameful. And it gets worse. We then come to a shameful rebellion. Verse 13, not many days later. Why don't we stop there for a minute? Not many days later? The younger son gathered everything together. How do you liquidate 1/3 of an estate that's accumulated for who knows how long in a family? How do you liquidate an entire estate in a few days? You're talking about land and animals, all that goes with it, a whole agrarian estate. How do you do that in a few days? I'll tell you how you do it. You sell cheap, right? You discount. And of course, somebody buying it is buying a future, because they're not going to get it until the father's dead. He sells it cheap. He discounts, devalues this estate to turn it into cash. Cheap, fast sale at a high discount. And he takes his money and he went on a journey into a distant country. Left the land of Israel for a Gentile land. That's what a distant country was. And Jews didn't go into distant countries and come back again without shaking the dust off their feet, so they didn't bring any defiled Gentile dirt back into Israel. That was Pharisaic religion. It gets worse. He did go into a distant country, a Gentile country, a pagan country, an idolatrous country, and there he squandered his estate with loose living. Squandered means scattered, or basically threw away. That's why he's called the prodigal. The word means wasteful. He took his entire future, liquidated at a discount, and then threw it away. It had taken generations to accumulate, and he wasted it fast. Loose living, what does that mean? Dissipated, debauched behavior. And the older brother in verse 25 says he spent it on prostitutes. This is one stupid guy, right? One stupid guy. But up to now, it's all in his control. Insolent, rebellious against his father. Discounting the value of the wealth that his father had for him. Winding up in a pagan, idolatrous, blasphemous environment. Throws it all away on sexual immorality. What a fool. In fact, of all the sinners that Jesus ever portrayed in his parables, this guy's the most extreme. Everything up to now under his control, but life's not always under your control, and something happens that wasn't under his control. Jesus introduces in verse 14, when he had spent everything. Perfect timing. He's got nothing left. A severe famine occurred in that country. Oh, gasp. This is the worst possible scenario. The worst possible sinner in the worst possible scenario. He's got nothing left, and there's a famine. We don't understand famine, but in ancient days, famine is basically when you eat garbage, and when there's no more garbage to eat, you eat your sandals, and when there are no more sandals to eat, you eat your animals that you can catch, and when there are no more animals that you can catch, you eat people. Like the famines described in the Old Testament, where they were eating afterbirth and children. This is life at the bottom. Absolutely at the bottom. It gets worse. Verse 15, he went and attached himself. Klao in the Greek means to glue. Stuck himself to somebody. You ever been to the third world? I've been to a lot of third world countries. I've had a lot of those little beggar kids coming up and grabbing my coat, pulling my pant leg. I can't get rid of them. They flock. Calcutta, India, it gets pretty scary when you've got about 25 of them pulling at everything. Can't get rid of them with their little distended stomachs and thin necks. That's what he did. He's got nothing left. He's got no dignity, nothing. He's got no friends. He's got no food. He's going to die. So he attaches himself to somebody, a beggar. And this guy, not with the purpose of paying him, but just to get rid of him, as becomes very clear, sent him into the fields to feed swine. Now the eyes really roll. Jewish boys don't do any of this. And they certainly don't hang around swine. This is beyond possibility. The Pharisee is saying, this is so ridiculous. This is so extreme. Nobody could ever be in this bad of condition. Well, you know what? When they sent him into the field to feed the swine, he went. It was a pretense, though. Because it says in verse 16, he was longing to fill his stomach with the pods that the swine were eating, and no one was giving anything to him. Man wasn't going to pay him. He wasn't going to feed him. It was just a ploy to get rid of him. And he got out there, and he has to eat what the pigs are eating. Now he's not only around the pigs, he is a pig. And again, I can't tell you the outrage. This is so bizarre to the Middle Eastern Jewish mind. Oh, by the way, he can't eat the carob pods. There's some interesting history on carob pods. Pigs can digest them, people can't. So a few forays into the carob pods with the pigs, and he would have to stop because he would get so sick. And they're saying no one possibly would end up a pig. What Jewish boy would ever do that? This is the worst possible sinner in the worst possible condition. Couldn't happen. What's this about? I'll tell you what it's about. This is a picture of the reckless sinner. This is the most extreme, immoral, disrespectful, stupid, wasteful sinner ever portrayed by Jesus. This is a sinner in rebellion against God, his Father. This is the sinner disdaining the goodness of God and the available inheritance. This is the sinner who hates God's person, who hates God's rule, who hates God's authority, who hates God's will, who shuns all responsibility, all accountability. This is the sinner who ends up on the street. This is the kind of sinner that kept coming to Jesus. The riffraff, the lowlife. This is the sinner that squanders every good thing. That's who this is. Sin is reckless evil. Sin is selfish indulgence. Sin brings destitution and it brings death. The freedom of the will is the most horrible bondage. He got what he wanted, the freedom of the will. Sin looks for fulfillment outside and away from God and never finds it. It leaves the rebel sinner exhausted, empty, poor, hungry, hopeless.